purchase of the Grand Lucayan Resort remains a top topic of discussion. A tech giant expanding on Grand Bahama. And a young man sharing his passion for art and Bahamian culture.
The Bahamas Tonight Northern Edition starts now.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Good evening all, I'm Megan Shepard. Thank you so much for tuning in. Topping news, a local parliamentarian is giving his take tonight on the government's decision to purchase the Grand Lucayan Resort. The MP says that although Bahamians have expressed mixed emotions about this latest move, this parliamentarian believes that the government is at a crossroad and tough decisions have to be made. Sabrina Brown reports.
Member of Parliament for Central Grand Bahama Iram Lewis says he supports the government's decision to purchase the Grand Lucayan Hotel, but he believes some important factors must be taken into consideration to ensure the success of the resort.
The casino must be branded by an operator who has the ability to attract their own players, as well as manage and operate one of the hotel properties in order to facilitate their own guests. And this is one of the reasons why the El Casino was so successful. The casino existed in the Princess Towers, where they had their own rooms, where they had control over where the guests stayed, so they were able to offer a complete package. So that model must also be looked at when we talk about the Grand Lucayan.
Lewis says in addition to good branding and management, proper airlift will be needed to bring guests to the resort in addition to cruise ship passengers.
Why can't Bahamas Air now become the direct shuttle to feed the hotel rooms? We take on the same model as the Princess did. The domestic routes that Bahamas Air is now operating, in my opinion, give it up. Western Air is doing pretty good. Southern Air is doing pretty good. Sky Bahamas, let them deal with the local domestic routes. Let Bahamas Air now become the junket that bring these passengers to Grand Bahama.
He's calling on Bahamians to prepare now for opportunities that will come as a result of the redevelopment of the Lucayan Strip.
What are we doing as Grand Bahamians? Are we expecting to get a job? Or should we look beyond that and now create opportunities for ourselves, create businesses? There will be spin-offs. There will be additional requirements by the hotel that now local Grand Bahamians can invest in. Are we upgrading our local restaurants and our local bars? Are we now starting our tour businesses, our tour companies? Are we now stepping up our game with respect to providing souvenirs? Are the fishermen stepping up their game with providing food? We'll need food. Are the farmers stepping up their game with providing food crops, farming crops? Are we doing that? Those are the directions that we need now to move in.
While Lewis believes the sale of the Grand Lucayan is a key component to restoring Grand Bahama, he does not think it will fix the local economy.
Money will have to be spent into the Grand Bahama economy outside of the Lucayan Strip in order to make the necessary impact needed to sustain the resort and restore the island. Just as the road, work and utility upgrades had to be made to accommodate Bahama, Grand Bahama needs to be fixed to accommodate the Grand Lucayan. However, unlike Nassau, where Bahama is located, Grand Bahama already has the beautiful roads and proper infrastructure in place.
Sabrina Brown, ZNS Network News.
The Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce is adding its voice to the debate over the government's decision to purchase the Grand Lucayan property. The president of the business community says the decision is in the best interest of Grand Bahama. President of the Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce, Mick Holding, says that the government is indeed in a tough predicament and purchasing the Grand Lucayan Resort will be the lesser of two evils. Holding says that under normal circumstances, he would not agree with a government owning a business that should be in the private sector. But he says that Grand Bahama is currently in an exceptional circumstance.
We certainly cannot afford another Princess Towers and International Bazaar situation. Already, there are a lot of businesses have been directly affected, but for almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years this October since the hotel closed, and some of the businesses around the hotel in Port Lucayan have already gone out of business, and I know that others are struggling desperately. So I think it's a case of there are very few alternatives, if any.
Now, if the government does follow through with purchasing the hotel property, Holding says that they should have a few key plans in place.
So there's some major impact on the economy if the hotel does fail to reopen. If the government do go ahead and buy it, I think that they shouldn't run it. I think it's important that they bring in professional management companies to run it on their behalf. And I think they should have an exit strategy. I think this should be a short-term fix and not a long-term ownership.
Holding adds that it is not just about those that are directly employed at the resort, but also those that will benefit from the trickle-down effect of having more guests on island. However, Holding adds that having sufficient airlift is another complication.
That's another problem to be addressed. Now, I don't think we have sufficient airlift, and that's got to be, as well as reopening the hotel itself, then looking at the airlift is another important issue to the success of the purchase of the hotel.
A local tech giant is following through on a commitment to hire and train Bahamians to run the operations. Tonight, Sabrina Brown tells us that the company has unveiled plans to expand on another island.
GIBC's Business Support Manager for the Bahamas and the Caribbean, Bernard Cooper, says the digital company is moving quickly towards its goal of injecting some $50 million into Grand Bahama's economy over the next 2 years. Cooper says the tech giant, which officially opened on island in June, is growing rapidly and is now training the second group of employees.
As of June 27, we did our initial launch, and at the time we had already employed up to 16 persons. Since then we have hired another tranche, and we are like almost 35. So in the Freeport community, we have the second tranche in who are actually in training now, going on, who's joining our team in the Bahamas.
Cooper says apart from the experts who work with the company, only Bahamians will be hired for the local operation.
Our CEO, Mr. Greg Wood, his biggest thing is about, encouraging and educating the people. Like, no one does the job better than the people who know how to do it themselves. So the natives, he was very strict with not bringing in foreigners to do the job that the Bahamians can potentially do. I said this before and I say it again, a lot of Bahamians here, we're very smart, knowledgeable, and very qualified to carry on any job. So it's just a matter of giving them the opportunity to carry it out. So he's been very strategic in having the right people selected for the right jobs here.
He commends the powers that be for the ease of doing business in Grand Bahama.
Right now it's like almost a triangle with GIBC, the government, and the Port Authority to ensure that there is no red tape or no issue when it comes to having work as usual here in the Bahamas. Like I said, we started in Freeport, and the expansion, we were looking to expand at least by December, but with the rapid growth and the increase of business and staff, we now expanding 2 months prior. So, like I say, the end of this month will be in Nassau, and hopefully we can make a mark in Nassau as well too.
As GIBC makes its mark on Grand Bahama, the digital company is now preparing to expand its services into the nation's capital.
Then the 27th of this month, we send the HR team will be in Nassau, where they start doing the initial conversation with the selection and the recruitment. And we are not potentially, but we are opening an office in the Nassau area. Hopefully, all goes well in the Liferkey area. So the 27th of September, we have our launch in Nassau. So the community, we have reached out to them to come on out. It's going to be at the Balmoral Resort, Balmoral, on the 27th of September. And then thereafter, 2 weeks after, we hope to have our next meet and greet with the community.
Sabrina Brown, ZNS Network News.
In other news, immigration officers arresting 4 foreign nationals and a Bahamian for breach of the Immigration Act. The 5 all appeared in court on Monday before Deputy Chief Magistrate Debbie Ferguson. The Bahamian man was arraigned for harboring an illegal person. It is alleged that a Jamaican male who had overstayed his time in the Bahamas was found at the residence of the Bahamian man. The Bahamian male was represented by attorney Simeon Brown. He pled not guilty and was given bail in the amount of $1,600. That matter was adjourned to December 10th for trial. Meanwhile, the Jamaican national was charged with overstaying. He pled guilty and was ordered to pay a fine of $2,000 or, in default, a year in prison. Deportation was recommended upon completion of the sentence. Meanwhile, 2 Ecuadorians had their day in court, answering to the charges of overstaying. They both pled guilty and were ordered to pay a fine of $2,000 or 1 year behind bars. Early deportation was recommended. Also, a Haitian national was charged for illegal landing. He pled guilty and was given a fine of $300 or 1 year in prison. He was ordered to be deported to Haiti upon payment of the fine or completion of the court-imposed custodial sentence. In other news, International Softball Hall of Famer and sports legend Greg Christie passed away earlier this week. Christie contributed much to the sporting world, civic organizations, and charity, but he was also instrumental in developing the field of journalism on Grand Bahama. Tonight, several persons who worked with Christie are sharing their experience and saying he will never be forgotten. Natalia Hall has the details.
Greg Christie has given much to the sporting world, but he was also a journalist. Christie began his journalism career in 1970. He was the editor and special projects officer at the Freeport News. His former colleague, Simon Lewis, was one of the persons who shared a close relationship with Christie in the journalism field. Lewis joined the Freeport News in 1976 and says he learned a lot about writing from Christie.
And Greg took us down, which should be Basel Blue Room on Queens Highway. And he sat me down, I think it was Melanie Pintard at the time. And he said, "You people just don't want to be writers all the days of your life, eh?" I said, "What you mean, Greg?" He said, "Well, just writing." He said, "No. There's more to it than that." And then he taught us some of the tricks. More importantly, he taught us how to lay out the newspaper. Because, writing it and laying out and publishing newspapers are 2 different things. And I learned a lot from listening to Greg and following that ambition. And at the end of the day, I became editor of the newspaper.
Christie once operated a public relations company called Greg Chris. Former journalist, director of the Hotel Corporation, Terrence Roberts, says he too had an opportunity to learn from Christie while he worked as a journalist for a company called Front Page Associates, which he says was the foundation of his career in journalism and public relations. Roberts considers Christie as his mentor.
I was very weak in the journalistic area, and so he actually conducted classes, and he taught me how to be a reporter. And of course, then he gave me assignments to practice. So I had to earn my first byline, and so I have a really high regard for Greg for taking the time to do that, and that's been the foundation actually of my career in journalism and public relations.
At Bahamas Information Services, Christie served as a consultant on 2 separate occasions, between 2002 and 2007, and again from 2013 until his demise. Former journalist Marva Monroe says she worked along with Christie at the Freeport News when she was in her early 20s. She says there's a lot that journalists across the country can learn from Christie, adding that she can never forget Christie's gentle spirit.
Very professional, passionate about journalism and what we did, the ethics, the standards, of course, divulging of sources and all of that stuff was a no-no. He was very keen on being the absolute best journalist.
Roberts says Christie had a strong background in the English language.
A stickler for facts, and while his stickling was understated, it was very valuable to those of us who worked with him.
Lewis says Greg Christie was also very active in his church. Mary Star of the Sea, as he was responsible for producing the weekly bulletins. He remembers him as a very loving and caring person who has contributed much to the entire country.
He never seemed to be rowdy or someone you can't talk to. He was always there, and he had a mannerism about him that you had to like the guy.
The veteran journalist and sports executive fell ill several months ago and died on Sunday, August 19th in hospital at the age of 70. Reporting for ZNS Network News, I'm Natalia Hall.
You're watching the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Stay with us. There's more news right after this break.